Welcome to Bad Movie Beatdown! Let's go back to 1979. A man called Rob Walker popped out of the womb, I was hardly a twinkle in someone's eye, and the disaster movie genre was on its last legs. The disaster movie genre became a big blockbuster in the 70s, with the trend being kicked off by Airport in 1970. Many followed in the light of that film's success, including Irwin Allen's infamous movies. However, things were starting to go wrong with the disaster movie. As the budgets and stars piled up, the scripts were getting worse and worse. One can see the decline with each passing Airport sequel. In 1978, we got the infamous Irwin Allen disaster, The Swarm, which was so bad that Allen refused to speak of it afterwards. But 1979 was too, excuse the pun, a disastrous year for the genre. First came Beyond the Poseidon Adventure, where apparently Michael Caine learnt nothing from being in The Swarm. Then came The Concorde, Airport 79, which was so stupid that Universal was forced to sell it as a comedy. And finally, the cherry on that shit sundae, Meteor. Cashing in on the sci-fi boom after Star Wars, it's a huge embarrassment for everyone concerned, and in my opinion, uncannily similar to what Armageddon would have looked like had it been made in the 70s. The director of this film is Ronald Neame, who also directed The Poseidon Adventure. How fitting then. The film immediately lets us know it's a dated production in its opening moments, with a score that sounds like a synthesizer being drowned. And the credits looking like Superman and Star Wars within the first 10 seconds. Brilliant. We have a narrator tell us about outer space. This is supposed to be scientific, but what it does show is that the filmmakers didn't do their homework.
Waited for them to drop by like old friends.
There's so many things wrong with that one shot that it would take far too long to explain.
The asteroid belt. A vast junkyard of metal and rock orbiting the sun between Jupiter and Mars.
Which does not look like a bunch of asteroids huddled together. Even the title is wrong. Meteor? You mean one of those little tiny space fragments that the Earth gets hit by all the time? You know, that's not very threatening. Do you mean an asteroid? Because now we're talking. Look, there's a yacht sailing through space. That's not oh wait, sorry, that's the first shot of the film. So this yacht is owned by Dr. Paul Bradley, played by Sean Connery. His race is cut short by the Coast Guard, who have orders from NASA to bring him in. By the way, it's Monday. Unless of course you were watching this video on the day it came up, in which case it's Friday. Apparently it's a matter of such grave importance that they have a jet ready for Paul.
You really would have cut across my balls? Yes, sir. Then I would have rammed you.
What a nice person. So Paul arrives at NASA. Ah, Miss Moneypenny. In the next room, Paul finds his friend Harry, who works for NASA, played by Carl Malden. Also, there is General Easton.
Harry, I left NASA 5 years ago. Why am I back?
7 days ago, Palomar Observatory reported the discovery of a new comet, General. Now, there's nothing unusual in that. They spot at least 9 or 10 every year, either themselves or other observatories. But it's where this one seemed to be going.
The asteroid belt.
Harry tells Paul about last Friday, where he changed the flight program of Mars probe Challenger 2. Whoa, 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 don't look at me like that. This was made before the Challenger disaster. Presumably the filmmakers named it after the lunar module on Apollo 17, although that doesn't make this next bit any less awkward. Challenger 2 is being piloted by Easton's son. Apparently the asteroid is on a trajectory that would hit a big one named Orpheus.
I am Morpheus.
No, Orpheus. On Sunday they begin to pull up to the belt and... is that a stage light? I know 1970s special effects aren't what we have now, but this certainly isn't Close Encounters of the Third Kind. A point proven when Orpheus is struck and explodes.
It's coming apart in a million pieces!
Genius, you might want to get out of the way before you get to here. Oh. I have to say, I admire General Easton. His composure given his son died yesterday is amazing.
I don't think I can ever forgive myself.
Yeah, it really shows. Anyway, a big chunk of Orpheus is now heading towards Earth along with some smaller buddies on a collision course in 6 days' time. Paul is asked to attend a meeting, which he accepts, and NASA has everything prepared for him to go.
Why don't you stick a broom up my ass? I could sweep the carpet on the way out.
I beg your pardon? So now it's Tuesday. It turns out the meeting is just between Paul and Harry, and we couldn't have had this talk the day before because they argue over an orbiting spacecraft called Hercules that Paul designed.
Hercules was never designed to be a nuclear weapon with 14 warheads pointing right down on Russia.
Not only Russia.
Or China, where the hell else? Those rockets were supposed to point outwards, not in. It was meant to defend us against the same goddamn threat that we're facing now.
Will you listen to me? That meteor is 5 miles wide and it's definitely going to hit us.
We're emoting through our shouting! We get a view of Hercules in space, essentially looking like a giant space toothbrush. Hello! I'm coming to save the world from the big bad asteroid! So we get to the real meeting, which involves General Adlon, played by Martin Landau, as played by Count Dracula.
You're going to tell the entire world we have nuclear rockets orbiting out there in direct contradiction to every international agreement we've ever made? That's an invitation to being called liars and warmongers.
And bloodsuckers!
The only thing we've got out there is Hercules.
Damn it. Hercules is not up there either, as far as anybody but we are concerned.
How do you launch a spacecraft with over a dozen nukes in secret? Naturally, it turns into a political bitch fight, so Paul goes off into a bar where it turns out the British have leaked the information about Orpheus.
The Prime Minister is in close consultation with the American President
Hey, Charlie,
and has volunteered
put the game back
every
on.
assistance.
We consider it deplorable that the American people should be dependent on the BBC to supply us with facts.
Well, it's more reliable than Fox News. Harry joins him.
They're calling the president.
What if he says no?
A couple of years ago, my son Andy started to complain about pains in his stomach.
What are you talking about?
Appendicitis, the doctor said. Miriam said, let's wait till tomorrow. The pain will go away. You know my Miriam. She can't stand the thought of an operation. That night when she went to bed, she cried herself to sleep. I went to the boys' room, picked him up, and took him to a hospital. 6 hours later, his appendix was out. He was feeling better, having an ice cream. And Miriam was all smiles. You get my point?
No. So in an extremely roundabout way, Harry's saying that if the President objects, they'll do it anyway. Exactly how the hell they would do that is thankfully never answered. Unfortunately, it appears that the missiles on the Hercules alone are not good enough to stop the peace of Orpheus. So Paul, Harry and Adlon go see the President, and no, he doesn't have an actual name, played by Henry Fonda. Apparently the Russians have their own equivalent to Hercules, but the problem is that the Russians won't admit to it, and it will take their combined strength of both sets of missiles to take out the asteroid. Wait, did I say asteroid?
You're going to ask what steps have been taken to make sure that this meteor never comes anywhere near the Earth's surface.
Yes, the film insistently calls an asteroid a meteor. I think the filmmakers probably thought that they were the same thing, and thus picked meteor because it sounded better. Which makes the fact that the President's holding a press conference about a meteor all the more comical.
Hercules is an armed orbiting satellite. Its nuclear weaponry aimed toward outer space.
Right name, wrong direction.
Really, does he think the President is going to openly admit that they had over a dozen nukes aimed at the communist bloc? Is he really that stupid? I mean, surely a much more appropriate line would be something like, "That's what it should have been." When you're coming up with better lines than the writers, something is wrong! The President also openly tells people that the Russians have their own version of Hercules, and essentially strong-arms them into accepting. Meanwhile, more crappy effects! The meteor's lighting doesn't even attempt to match, and why the hell is the sun in eclipse? Did they do any research at all? Right, Wednesday, and they're in New York. They go to the AT&T building, or the Sony building for you young whippersnappers. They take a lift ride down to the secret underground base built underneath it. Wait, what? Am I watching a James Bond movie?
Why not some sensible place like Houston?
This is easy access to a total telecommunications setup right above our heads. And nobody in their right minds would think of putting their most important emergency striking power under the busiest city in the world.
Well, of course not, because if someone nukes New York, as opposed to a remote desert outpost, you'd be f***ed!
Oh, good news. The Russians are coming.
I would like to go on record that I consider allowing the Russians to come into this center to be a grave error.
He has actually got a point there, considering this is the Cold War. But hey, that might get in the way of the message. So he's actually an intolerant bigot for saying that. Intolerant! Intolerant! We also get introduced to a bunch of side character technicians who you won't give a shit about, and just building up the numbers. We also have Sir Trevor Howard, who plays cosy Brit astronomer Sir Michael Hughes, who makes his entire performance on a video screen, and therefore mostly pointless. Way to waste your cast. Michael tells Paul that the first clusters will start hitting locations in the next 24 hours. And just to expand our cast even further, we get some Russians! Astronomer Dubov, played by Brian Keith, and his translator come astrophysicist Titania, played by Natalie Wood. Thursday, and a sign tells us it's 3 days until impact, and Dubov and Avalon communicate through translators.
Or is the direction of the rocket just an accident?
Not funny.
Welcome to New York, Dr. Dubov. I'm glad you're here. Must we have everything in duplicate?
It's a recognized procedure.
Still not funny, and now stupid. Why is it procedure to have translators talk over each other? Surely if one got it wrong, the other would correct? Adlan's role is essentially to be a wrong and untrusting fool. He's being villainised because he doesn't trust the Russians who America is in an arms race with. So what? We also learn that Peter the Great is exactly the same as Hercules, right down to the missiles. 16. Oh, and it's Friday already. Well, that was a completely pointless day. What the hell were they doing during that time? I mean, it's not like it's the end of the world. No, hurry! So we cut to some Eskimos as a bright red thing flashes in the sky. I wonder what that might be. Oh look, Eskimo man has a family. You know, a cheap sympathy tactic so he can be all upset when they die. No Steven Seagal fight for you this time. We're in the middle of the movie. This is normally the point where a flimsy premise dies a slow, painful death because they haven't thought of anything to progress the middle. And that's exactly what happens here.
With compliments. I had them strip the army blanket off your bed and put on some proper sheets.
That's very kind.
I've also got some decent soap for you because using the stuff they give you here is like washing your hands with a rock.
Thank you. That's a very pretty scarf.
Thank you.
If I wanted to see people drink coffee, look at graphs and exchange boring small talk, I'd go to a f***ing office! Cinema! The great escapist medium! Oh, and we get a tedious romance between Paul and Titania, including her insanely lengthy backstory. I would show you a clip, but it would result in a simultaneous mass suicide of boredom.
Sir Michael is reporting on the Jadro Bank monitor. There are meteors coming in over Central Europe.
Oh, thank Christ! So in Italy, we get treated to...
They've burnt up. The cluster's evaporated. Dascati says that not one of them got through.
F*** you, movie! You just robbed us of something interesting!
I think we can assume the emergency's over. This particular one and the emergency in general. It's a pity the world's been sent into a state of unnecessary panic. But there's your threat, Dr. Bradley.
Are military generals really this stupid? Do they really think that a 5-mile block of rock is going to burn up in the atmosphere? Forced antagonism much?
Not one promise of calamity has come true. And as far as I'm concerned, not a single one will.
Wah! Wah!
When common sense is restored, and the president has returned the control of this center to me, I shall return!
Jesus, Martin Landau, leave some set for the inevitable asteroid attack. And more shouting! When your audience is falling asleep, just shout a lot!
Loud noises!
Yeah, so Dubov phones up the Russian embassy so they can start working together. Why didn't they do this days ago? Oh yeah, because it's meant to be ironic punishment for Adlon. Then we get a shot of Peter the Great in space, including a shot where it looks like Earth is about to be penetrated by missile penises. Peter the Great indeed. We get more dull, I mean thrilling shots of Peter the Great and Hercules in space. I'm watching a bunch of people watch a bunch of screens and models slowly turning. For 4 minutes! That's 4 minutes of your life that you're never getting back! Not to mention the models look like toys. You can see the screws and stickers. And apparently they have to wait until it's near enough to fire. Great! More stalling! Maybe they'll have a scene where they twiddle their thumbs. So it's Saturday and we cut to some skiers. Finally, some action outside that bloody underground set. Everyone is smiling and happy. Did you really have to go around and say good morning to everyone? Good morning, good morning! They're totally unaware that a bloody great asteroid is about to hit. It does, and it sets in motion an avalanche. Look out! It's stock footage! Watch out for the styrofoam, I mean snow! Oh, and that's not even the worst of it, folks. This $16 million movie, which was big money in those days, I'd like to add, doesn't even have its own special effects. This is partially reused footage from the movie Avalanche, starring Mia Farrow and Rock Hudson. If you watch the trailer, you can even see the footage that they reused in Meteor. I know this was standard practice in the days before videotape, but really, where did $16 million go? Later that night, oh come on! They're not even trying anymore! People playing cards and chess? I've seen more activity in graveyards! Oh, and more tedious romance. When does this asteroid hit? Because it really can't come soon enough. But luckily the fragments cause more action, this time in Hong Kong, with the previously unmentioned Hong Kong correspondent telling them that a fragment has caused a tsunami. No! Not the puppy! Isn't it funny how fear can make your hair grow back? My hair has come back! Well, it's Sunday, finally, so we can launch those nukes. Oh look, it's Adlon!
My apologies, Bradley. I was very wrong.
Well, his character served his purpose. I bet nothing will happen to him. Unfortunately, Michael has some bad news.
We've picked up another splinter. A big one.
Direction?
The United States. The eastern seaboard.
Due when?
Just about now.
Uh-oh, they haven't launched Hercules yet. They have to wait until it's ready. Oh wait, false tension. Hercules is launching fine. And we get some really tense scenes of people watching screens and repeated footage of toys. And then the fragments hit in all their red fakeness. And we learn why the asteroids were bright red things as the filmmakers tint the screen to hide the fact that their New York destruction is hilarious stock footage of buildings exploding or being demolished. In the underground base, it starts falling apart around them, which is exactly why you shouldn't have built it under a major city, you silly sods. And then we cut to the exact same shot of the missiles passing over Earth. Again. So a bunch of minor supporting characters and extras bit the dust, but there is one prominent fatality. No, not Adlon! Why? It also turns out that the lift does not work anymore, so they're trapped underground. So yeah, pretty much the standard disaster movie with trapped survivors introduced in the last 20 minutes. Maybe if they introduced it earlier, I might have given a shit. Luckily, although their choice in placement is dubious, they did at least have the thought to connect the base to the subway. I should also mention they built the base next to the Hudson River, so I hope there's no structural problem. Oh dear. Up in space, oh my god. Does this movie not understand how physics works? Things cannot fall in space. Oh, and if you're firing missiles into space, you're supposed to let them glide. That's not malfunctioning, that's how missiles work. And the special effects are even worse. In some shots I don't think the missiles are actually moving. Just in case you haven't got the point yet, there's a hilarious visual of the missiles aligning themselves in a nice matching pattern of Russian and US, side by side. Yeah, what's the message of the film? Muddy water starts bursting in, which looks hilarious because the actors look like they are covered and sprayed in shit. An appropriate metaphor for this movie, you might say. There's hardly any thrilling sacrifices or close escapes. They just run up the escalator to safety. How meh. The missiles finally hit the chunk of Orpheus, but not before some hilarious intercussing between the rockets and a whole minute of stock explosion. It's a roaring success, and the chunk of Orpheus has been completely vaporised. Wait, what? Wouldn't there still be some small chunks of rock? Even Michael Bay's Armageddon wasn't this stupid, and this is Michael Bay we're talking about! So with everything hunky-dory, it's time for Dubov and Titania to go home with a baseball bat signed by the Dodgers. Thankfully, no, there was no sequel and it's time for the credits to roll. You'll be interested to know that there was not one but two scientific advisors on the film. Glad to see their knowledge was put to good use. As you might have guessed, Meteor was a huge and costly flop and another nail in the disaster movie coffin. Things didn't get much better with the following years When Time Ran Out, with Paul Newman turned out to be another dud. And then, laying a devastating finishing blow, was the extremely funny spoof Airplane, which was so pitch perfect it actually managed to destroy the whole genre. Sure, we've had disaster movies since then, but they've all been shit. And I don't have high hopes for 2012 either, with its genius marketing tactic of putting all the destruction in the trailer. Thanks for saving me the ticket price. I'm Matthew Buck, beating down bad movies everywhere.